Hello guys, and we are on the next game on the open file domination series, and this game is played between Nimzowitsch and Capablanca. It is played in New York 1927, and the opening is a Caro-Kann opening, advanced variation. The game goes, the white player is Nimzowitsch, the black player is Capablanca. E4, C6, D4, D5, E5, Bishop F5, Bishop D3. Nimzowitsch was always preoccupied with theory, but this move is definitely not dangerous for black. Actually, even at height of his powers, he could not outplay the great Cuban genius. Capablanca's simple and natural playing style usually easily prevailed over Nimzovich's ingenuity. Bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, then e6. Some sort of advanced French has appeared. Black has achieved his main goal. The light squared bishops are no longer. Then knight c3, queen b6, knight ge2, and here knight ce2 deserved attention. White should play on the king side and strengthen d4 pawn with a pawn on c3. But Nimzowitsch preferred to piece play, not fearing the exchange of his center. Now c5, dc5, bishop takes c5, and short castles, knight e7. Here knight c6 was more precise move, eliminating the possibility that white missed on the next move. Knight a4. Here instead of knight a4, b4 was very interesting option. After queen takes b4, then knight to b5, queen here a5, and bishop e3. Here interesting complications arise. Here if at all black exchanges, then there is knight d6 check is coming. So here a6 was better. If at all this is taken, then queen takes b5 would come. Here rook ab1 was better, and after a takes b5, there is bishop takes c5, knight d7, and rook takes b5, queen a4, then bishop d6. So white missed his chance. He could have gone for b4, but he went for knight a4, then queen c6, then knight takes c5, queen takes c5, and in this position where white played more originally than inventively, black is problem free and probably even slightly better. With his next move, white follows his strategy based on installing a piece on d4 and attacking on the king side. Now bishop e3, queen c7, f4. Three pieces protect this pawn. All of them are hence restricted. White will not be able to advance f5. So this move cannot be very good. Although for now everything looks okay for white. Knight f5, c3. This move weakens the light squares further. If bishop f2, h5 would secure the knight on the excellent f5 square. Still, this was better for white than the plan he chose. And instead of bishop for g4, and now if g4 now, and on the next moves would be a mistake. This move will be shown in the game. After knight f5, knight c3, then knight c6. Here black delays castling because he can choose where to castle. Actually, Capablanca was trying to find the best place for the king, because he predicted that a major piece endgame would soon arise. Rook ad1. Actually, this move was later criticized by Ali Khain because the rook does nothing on d file, and suggested the preparation of the move c4 instead. However, in that same year, Nimzowitsch formulated his theory about the blockade. One important postulate was that as many pieces as possible should control the blockading square, and in this case the d4 square. Here bishop f2 is better, with the idea of preparing c4 or g4. So then after that, Capablanca went g6. This g6 is a strange move. Capablanca chooses this move. This move is he's setting to put a positional trap. Here castling or h5 would be more natural. Then g4. This just natural looking move is very bad. The move forcingly leads to the blocking of the king side, leaving the queen side as the only open front. Bishop f2 was suggested here. And after bishop f2, if black played h5, then c4, the position will be balanced. Now knight takes e3, queen takes e3, h5, and this is the point. Black forces white's hand. Now g5. All files on the king side are definitely closed. Black will patiently organize play on the semi-open c file. Here if at all h3 is played, then h takes g4, then after h takes g4, then this is the point that black waited for castling. Now he has a dangerous attack on the h file. And after castling shot, then and the situation has stabilized. Black's king is safe, and white's expansion on the king side failed miserably, leaving his king desperately weak. However, it is very difficult for black to convert his evident advantage due to white's control over the d4 outpost. Black's hunt for the white king must commence on the queen side. Once the d4 outpost is conquered, black will have the chance to catch the white king. The next stage is clear. Black tries to put pressure on d4 and the c3 pawn. Knight d4, queen b6, rook f2, rook f c8, and then a3. White wants to protect all his pawns. This move was perhaps also psychological, showing black that the b4 square is fully controlled. Black must go for the b4 break or the game would be drawn. Rook c7, rook d3, knight a5. And this move is a waste of time, but still not a bad move. The opponent doesn't have an active plan, so various attempts are allowed in order to crush opponent's defenses. Rook e2. White must be patient here, trying to be ready to counter black's activities on the queen side. Now rook e8 in order to prevent the potential blow of f5, and no reason to be impatient. Don't rush. Here instead, if knight c4, then queen c1 doesn't give much to black. The d4 knight is a key defensive piece and it must be exchanged at the right time. After rook e8, then king g2, then knight c6. Now rook e d2. Here, if at all knight takes c6, uh, and after queen takes c6, then black has two plans. After rook d4, queen b6, queen b6, and here black can even play b takes c6, and after queen takes b6, a takes b6, and king to f3, and rook a8. Here after this, if queen takes a7, then that would be a blunder, because then b6 comes. After queen to a6, then rook to a8. But white didn't go knight takes c6, and he went for rook ed2 and rook ec8. Now rook e2, knight e7, and then rook ed2, rook c4, and the rook is ready to be transferred to e4. If the knight moves on a typical use of a semi-open file, an outpost can be utilized for transferring a rook to another file. And this is the white's maximum. This position is white's maximum. It's all he can hope to achieve. After queen h3, Nimzowitsch actually dreams about advancing the f5. It was better to keep the queen in the center. King g7, rook f2. Here if f5, f5, then knight takes f5, knight takes f5, now g takes f5, now rook d4, queen rook d4, if at all, queen takes h5, then rook g4 check, and rook rook g3, then rook h8 comes. So white didn't push f5, he went rook f2, then a5. Now black is ready to launch his queenside pawns. Rook e2, then knight f5, and this move is right on time. The d4 knight is not supported well enough. Also the h5 pawn is not in danger. Now g takes f5, queen f, and knight takes f5 check, and g takes f5, then queen f3, and king g6, and rook ed2, rook e4, and this move is very simple but very strong. Black can benefit from the c file later. Now it is important to control the d4 square. Rook d4, rook c4, and Capablanca stated that white should exchange rooks despite the queen endgame being winning for black due to the exposed white king and weak f4 pawn. Queen f2, here instead if rook takes c4, then rook takes c4, queen f2, then queen b3 is much better for black, and even b4, b5, b4 may be on the cards. After queen f2, queen b5, then king g3. Again, white pieces are on the best defensive squares. On the other hand, black pieces are on the ultimate attacking ones. Thus, pawn action is needed. However, perhaps prematurely, black creates one more weakness in white's camp, the d4 pawn. Rook c takes d4, c takes d4, queen c4. White is paralyzed. Knowing that Capablanca is conducting the black pieces, the rest is a matter of technique. There was no player of the past with better conversion technique than the Cuban legend. King g2, b5, then king g1, b4, ab4, ab4, and of course taking with the queen would be nonsensical. Black wants to weaken the b2 pawn, not exchange it. If needed, the black pawn can be moved to b3, securing the important c2 square. And now king g2, queen c1, threatening rook e1, king g3, queen h1, rook d3, now rook e1, rook f3, now rook d1, b3, rook c1. Now white goes rook e3, because there is the idea of rook c3 here. If at all see any other move, I don't know what move can be played here. If at all king h4 is a blunder because rook c2 is coming, and so then if at all h3 is played, then rook g1 is coming, then it must be taken. He cannot go here because of rook g4 mate, and I don't know what move can white play here, and any other move, then rook is the same is coming. Queen takes g1 must be taken. There is all the moves are blunder. The queen cannot be moved. Then rook e1, queen f2, rook c1, again queen g1 check, queen g2, then queen takes d4 comes. Rook c3 is also threatened. So here white resigned here. So then actually white played rook e3, I believe. Just a minute. After rook c3, rook to e3, but then rook to e3, but this is coming. What? Rook c1 is threatened. So after rook e3, here rook f1. Rook f1 is played. So the queen cannot escape here. Takes e4, queen takes e3. So, and it was a real pleasure to see the perfect exploitation of the C file and the beautiful way in which Capablanca employed his major pieces. Okay guys, thank you all. I hope you would have enjoyed the game. I will meet you in the next game.